Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is the second part of neonatal ventilation strategy. In the first part, we spoke about the ventilation as a basic and its goal, how lung injury occur, how to prevent it, what are the available modes and strategy, some important definition and hints, and what you do before touching the ventilator. And we finish at the point of looking at your ventilator for the available graphic and information. So today I will speak about the graphic and information, then some application as problems and how to correct. So the ventilator will give you some idea about the pathophysiological change which occur in your baby and about your setting and the measurement taking out from the ventilator. And this will be through three types: the waves, loops, and the indirect measurement through the volume, the compliance, and the resistance by measuring through the pressure and the flow from the ventilator. So the measurement which are very important is the PEEP and the MAP, and the trend which you can get from the measure PEEP and MAP selected by the baby can tell you a lot about the pathophysiological change inside your baby. The same like the compliance and the resistance, and then the volume which is received by the baby and is their volume leak or not, and the time constant which is important to calculate the inspiratory time and the expiratory time and put your rate to make good synchronization without air trapping, without no inspiratory hold, and to decrease the overexpansion which will appear in the C20C and prevent pneumothorax, and at the end can you prevent lung injury. So versus what is the time constant? Time constant, it is present in seconds, which how many seconds you can use to inflate the lung up to 60%. And before we are calculating by multiplying the lung compliance by the air resistant, but most of our computerized new machine ventilator, they can give you the number directly without measurement. The 60% is not important for us. The important for us is the 95%, which represents 3 time constant. So by measuring 3 time constant, we can calculate how much is the inspector time which we need for the baby. And the C20C ratio, as we said, which reflect for you the over expansion which occur if you are giving higher pressure, unneeded higher pressure. So we reach to the maximum pressure which will give you the ideal tidal volume which is required by the baby, but more than this pressure will not give any more benefit in the improvement in the tidal volume, and instead it will cause air trapping, hyper expansion, and pneumothorax can occur. So the C20/C, it compares the compliance change as the final 20% of the compliance load of the total compliance. And I mean here by the compliance is the dynamic compliance. And as you know, the dynamic compliance is different from the line compliance because it includes also the effect of the muscle, diaphragm, and the thoracic cage itself, plus any other resistance. So when you see C20/C less than 0.8 or less than 1 in some ventilator, it means that overexpansion occur, and you have to see why there is overexpansion. Either you choose tidal volume high or pressure high, and you have to check the pathophysiological change occur with the baby and how much PCO2 and ventilation in general and oxygenation. And if you look to the loops at that time, you will find that there is a leak, there is what's called a peak here at the last part. The DC O2 in high frequency, it is very important also, which is the gas transport coefficient. It's calculated by multiplying the frequency by the square root of the tidal volume. The more the dCO2, the more washing of CO2, and the less BCO2 in your blood gas. So if you are following the dCO2 and the trend of change, you can know that your baby want to be weaned from the amplitude or from the amplitude and the frequency later on, and there is improvement in the tidal volume or not, and there is retention of CO2 even before you do your blood gas. The wave, we have three types of waves, and the wave, it coming drawing in the horizontal line is the time, and against the time is the type of wave which it is drawn, either the pressure wave, the flow wave, or the volume wave. I will start by the pressure curve, and the pressure curve, it is very simple and show only how much pressure is delivering through the respiratory support by the ventilator to the baby, no more. So it will show you that during inspiration it reached to the PIP, for example, of 20 and come back to 5, and this red circle with the negative wave, small, it represents the effort of the baby at the triggering. So this is the triggering, which usually appear like that in a negative small wave. The pressure curve, it tells you nothing about the flow, and the most important is the volume. It will not tell you anything about the volume. So it is the least useful, and if you put your finger at the sensor of the ventilator connected to the ETT, you will find no flow, no volume, but the pressure will be drawn like that. So it is not so important to look to the pressure curve, but more important is the flow curve, which show you the flow during inspiration and then during expiration. And in between there is plateau. This is drawn by my hand, so you'll find here the plateau looks big, looks long, but usually it is smaller than that. But here is the inspiratory flow, here is the expiratory flow, and the area under the inspiratory flow here, this is considered to be the tidal volume during inspiration, and here is the expiratory flow, and must be equal, otherwise there is a leak or air trap. And from the start of the flow to reach 100 flow, maximum flow, then start to decrease till we reach the 0. This is the inspirator time. And here in the expiration, it starts from the expiration, and the expiration will reach till peak expiratory flow, then the flow will start to decrease till reach 0. If the expiration here finish, expiratory flow finish here, for example, before reaching the 0, it means that the expiratory time is less, means that air trapping, means that there is leak, and we will see this later. So this is useful to detect obstruction, leak, and it's important to adjust the inspiratory time, especially in the SIMV and the SIBV. In the BSV, usually we are putting order to make it little long to allow the baby to choose his own inspiratory time. So from circle to circle, you find the inspiratory time different from one cycle to one cycle according to the baby own inspiratory time which is selected. If you look here, this is normal inspiratory flow, expiratory flow, and a small area of plateau in between, and both will return to 0. Then the other cycle, it is the same here. This is drawn and this is real one. If you look to this graph, what it show you? This is normal inspiratory flow and going to zero. This is normal expiratory flow and going to zero. The expiratory time is more than the inspiratory time, 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. There is small area here between the inspiration and the expiration, like plateau. But if you see the next one, inspiratory flow and going back, and before reaching to the zero, it cut here and going time for expiration. So here the ventilator start to allow for expiration before the flow go to zero. Still there is high flow and the expiration is start. Means that the inspiratory time here is small inspiratory time. So short inspiratory time, the flow is high at the end of inspiratory time. So the correction is to increase the inspiratory time and looking to your graph till inspiration finish here at the zero and then expiration will start. And be sure that the tidal volume is not affected. What this graph show you? Inspiration flow going back and reach to the zero, then still there is a hold here. The machine holds the baby in inspiration because the inspiratory time is longer than the normal. The other cycle is the same. Inspiration, inspiratory flow, reach maximum, then going back till reach zero, and still the inspiratory time before starting the expiration is long. So here the inspiratory time is long. So the flow reach zero before the inspiratory time end. So we are keeping the baby in inspiratory hold. We are not allowing the baby to expiration. And this will cause asynchrony between the baby breathing and the ventilator. So to correct, if normal tidal volume, short the inspiratory time and be sure to keep the tidal volume not affected. This is the third one, which is the volume curve. It is very important and is the most important curve of them. It shows the inspiration and the reach the maximum and then start the expiration. The area under the inspiration represent the inspiratory tidal volume and the area under the expiration represent the expiratory tidal volume, and this is the expiratory time and this is the inspiratory time. So from this curve we can get the inspiratory time if it is acceptable or need to be changed, also the expiratory time. It also show you if there is any difference between the inspiratory tidal volume or the expiratory tidal volume, which can occur from a leak. So it is a key element to tell you how much air is entering and leaving the lung, and it is particularly useful to detect leak. Loops, these are essential two loops. They are very useful because they are measure not only one factor against the time, but it is measuring two factors against each other: the pressure against the volume in the pressure volume loop and the flow volume loop, which measures the flow against the volume. So in the pressure volume loop, which is essentially to show you the compliance, which is drawn by this line, and the loop it will show you the inspiratory curve flow, and then the expiratory it is anti-clockwise, like that, anti-clockwise, and it can reflect the inspiratory resistance from the curve down and the curve up reflecting the expiratory resistance. And here is the dynamic compliance, and it will show you how much volume change per pressure increase. So if we have, this is the maximum tidal volume which we need, and we get by this pressure, it would be different. If we get it by less pressure, means that the compliance is improving. If we get it here, so means that the compliance is improving, because here we'll find that the compliance will go to the left side, and here if I use till here pressure, so the compliance will go more to the left side, so there is improvement in the compliance. In the other side, if we need more pressure to get the same tidal volume, this means the compliance become poor, or the baby will get hyper expansion and a peak will appear. In the other one, it is the same. It shows you also the compliance in the pressure volume loop. But see here, the anti-clockwise end here, or preceded by clockwise small loop. This clockwise small loop means that there is creation of negative pressure. From where? From the baby. So the baby is triggering here. So clockwise to anti-clockwise means the baby is triggering. What does this show? It shows that the baby is taking this loop clockwise. Inspiration, expiration, inspiration, expiration. So this is the baby on spontaneous effort. The baby is breathing only without any pressure support. This is the baby is breathing through PEEP. So either the baby on CPAP or the baby on mechanical ventilation, and there is ventilator failure. And sometimes you found this picture the same, but the loop is coming here, like that, here. And the baby is so tachypneic that the ventilator cannot drive any pressure. And if you go to the measurement, you will find that the BIP of the baby is equal to 7. Why you are giving the baby 20/6, but the measuring BIP is selected 7. So the baby looks like breathing by his own effort against only the PEEP or the CPAP. So look to your ventilator to see if there is ventilator failure, or the baby is so tachypneic from auto triggering, or so tachypneic because of failure of synchronization or deterioration in the compliance of the baby, and he reach by checking every element to reach where the pathology, where the cause which causes this deterioration, and correct before telling that the baby needs no support, and expect the baby, and then you re-intubate the baby, and the baby will need more setting. So this picture show you the baby during spontaneous breathing without pressure support, and it move in the clockwise direction, while that one show you the loop while the baby is supported by pressure ventilation support with two different volume curve, one from the spontaneous breathing and the other one also from the supported breathing with different inspiratory time and the different tidal volume. The second one is the flow volume loop. A lot of us don't look to this flow volume loop, while it is very important. It can give you a lot about leak and differentiate leak from auto-PEEP or from overexpansion due to air trapping, and it can tell you about the change in the resistance or the presence of secretion or fluid in the circuit. So it is very important. We will see now in the example of some problem and how to solve it. Let us examine ourselves. What is that? This is a flow curve. Is there anything wrong? By the way, it is just drawn by hand, not reflected from a ventilator. So what is there? Here in this circle, the expiration while going to reach the zero, it stop here before reaching the zero. So here there is some either volume is less than the inspiratory, so it's leak, or some air trap didn't reach zero, air trapping. So how can I know? Look here, this is the flow volume loop where you find inspiration and the expiration, and the inspiratory must be equal to the expiratory. Also this is drawn by hand. So look at the expiration, it goes smoothly, and instead of reaching here to the zero, it reaches here, didn't reach zero, but where? On the flow line, the vertical line, means that there is change in the flow during expiration by the negative, so there is air trapping. It will give you this picture in the real picture on the ventilator, which means it is auto-PEEP, air trapping, auto-PEEP. And what is the importance of this auto-PEEP? The auto-PEEP, we are creating this auto-PEEP, also called auto from the baby, but in most of the time we are the one who creates the auto-PEEP. The effect of the auto-PEEP, that the nurse will call you to show some deterioration in the condition of the baby, or hyperinflation, or blood gas change, and some CO2 retention with drop of the pH, or the baby is working hard and there is hyperexpansion, or there is desaturation, and then you can find air leak before there was increase in the work of breathing. So this is the effect of the auto-PEEP. And to correct to the auto-PEEP, you have to look to your inspiratory time and look to the expiratory time in relation to the rate, and prolong the expiratory time or decrease the rate to give more expiratory time enough to reach to the zero. And if we cannot, we can adjust the PEEP by decreasing to the 75 of the auto-PEEP measured by some ventilator. And if there is a other cause like bronchospasm or secretion, you have to make suctioning. So the auto-PEEP mostly is coming from us when we are measuring the inspiratory time in a wrong way, long enough with high respiratory rate, so the expiratory time is not enough. But also look to your baby, there may be bronchospasm or some secretion. What is that loop? This is the compliance, which is here will be the volume, and here the pressure. So this is the inspiration and this is the expiration, anti-clockwise. But here the expiration didn't reach to the zero. Why? Why this gap or leak? It will appear here. This is the volume, inspiratory volume, and the expiratory volume didn't reach to the zero. Before zero, it is cut here. So there is volume, loss of volume. Loss of volume means leak, but also it can occur in auto trap. So how we can differentiate? As we said before, we have to go to the flow volume loop, where the inspiration is running normally, and then expiration is start, and instead of returning back to the zero, it returns before the zero on the horizontal axis, which represents the volume. So volume leak means there is a leak, not auto trapping. So the effect of leak, if there is a leak, you don't know how much tidal volume you are giving the baby, because in every time the ventilator will calculate that the baby is receiving tidal volume less than the volume guarantee which you adjust. So the baby will initiate order for the ventilator to drive more pressure to get the volume which needed. So more pressure. The more the pressure, the more the resistance, the more the leak. So again, there will be more leak, so more pressure, and at the end the baby will receive a lot of pressure. You don't know how much tidal volume during respiration is going. There will be either lung overinflation in some area which has good compliance, and the pneumothorax can occur, and you don't know how much support you are giving your baby. This is the effect of leak. So there is loss of tidal volume, increased work of breathing. You will find there is deterioration of the blood gases or sudden deterioration when pneumothorax occur. And to correct, you have to define from where the leak. Either the leak because you are using a small ETT tube, and if it is small enough and you know that your baby need more support, you have to change. If the leak can be tolerated less than 40%, and the condition of the baby is okay, you can continue. If the leak, whatever, and you know from the history and you know that your baby can be weaned very quickly and it can be shifted to non-invasive, you can extubate. But in some ventilator, they are saying in their manufacturer that leak can be auto-adjusted by the ventilator itself, compensated up to 80%. I cannot believe this. And I cannot wait for a baby with 80% leak. And also don't forget that leak is associated with ventilatory pneumonia, ventilatory inducing pneumonia, and aspiration. So correction is important. Sometimes you have to correct this leak by adjusting the position of the tube from time to time, but don't believe in adjusting the position in high leak, because the support will be undefined. So if there is ETT leak and you can change, you can check also the ventilator. There may be a leak in the circuit in the ventilator itself, or if the baby has leak syndrome, pneumothorax, you can treat by tapping according to the condition of the baby. So this is again the compliance curve, and here the curve has a shape like a peak of duck or whatever, this peak. So this means that yes, the C20 over C is high, sorry, is less than 0.8 or 0.1, and there is hyper expansion, and instead of getting the pressure which we need by the pressure here, we are increasing more pressure which give no more benefit in the tidal volume. So there is over expansion. So what is the cause? Either we are using very high tidal volume, and to deliver this high tidal volume we will need more pressure, or sorry, too high MAP, or we have short expiratory time, so the inflation time in expiratory time is very large, very long, and that will affect the baby by causing volume trauma or paratrauma, and decrease the static lung compliance from the over distension of the lung, and increase the required pressure, and also it will be difficult weaning. For correction, we have to decrease the PIP to the least possible, which will give us the optimum tidal volume, or the tidal volume which we need. Volume guarantee is helpful in that one. This is for lung protection. and to avoid the high map. This again the compliance curve and what it show. If we consider this is the normal, for example, so here shift of the compliance to the right, what is mean? Shift to the left, what is mean? So here, if we are looking to the trend of the compliance, this is very important. It will tell you that after few hours there is more shift to the right, means that the compliance become bad. So why you have to search why? Is there any secretion, de-recruitment of the alveoli, loss of ventilator support, pulmonary hemorrhage, pulmonary edema, whatever, we have to search for the cause. And here there is improvement, for example, after we giving Cervanta, so there is improvement in the compliance, and if you make blood gases, you will find a lot of improvement, and you have to wean your baby from the tidal volume if you are using the volume guarantee, or from the pressure if you are not using. So it shows the gradual deterioration, increased pressure requirement if we are shifting to the right, increased work of breathing, deterioration of the blood gas. Normal, decreased compliance, and increased compliance by shifting to the left. What is that one? This is the flow. Volume loop. Inspiration is passing smoothly, but during the expiration you find it's not going on the blue line, it is going like tooth shape regularity. So this means there is secretion, there is increase in the resistance, so the baby will be deteriorated. The nurse will call you to tell you that the baby is working hard. She will tell you that blood gas is showing to retention. She can tell you that the PO2 become less, or the baby become agitated, asynchronization. So just look into this one, you will find the cause. The cause here is secretion, but don't forget that this can occur also from any water inside the circuit of the ventilator. So the effect of secretion, as we said, and don't forget raining in from fluid due to condensation. What is that one? Very rapid rate. Very rapid rate, reach 100-120 per minute. So the baby is giving no support, loss of tidal volume. At that time you can find that the baby who was giving 20/5, now the written PIP is 8 or 7, equal the same like your CVAP. The baby is so tachypnic, there is deterioration in the blood gas, and sometimes the BCO2 is washed. Baby on SIBBV, and this very high rate, and baby start to wash. Although you can find that still the X-ray is bad, or the condition of the baby, you believe that it's bad, but the baby is washing CO2, maybe have also metabolic element. So some will run and extubate the baby need no support. No, the baby may need more support, or the baby still needs support, not more support, just needs the same support, but there is some element which cause this picture to appear, which is the auto-triggering that the ventilator wrongly observes that the baby is triggering so supporting in PTV or SIBBV, so give you this picture and washing of CO2. So this can come from circuit leak, high leak, or fluid inside the circuit, or if you adjust the trigger threshold very low. So a lot of support from the ventilator to the baby. You have to correct the air leak. If you are using the PSV, change to pressure control, increase the trigger threshold, remove the water in the circuit, and then look to your baby. After that, he will be settled, and the PCO2 will come back to near normal. But if you find that the baby is persistently tachypnic more than 80, it is not auto-triggering. So before you extubate your baby and telling that the baby is agitated from the ATT and need no support, look at the setting and the measurement coming from the baby. You know your baby. Is the baby is improving enough to be extubated or not? Sorry. Or maybe the baby still needs support and more support, because the important for the baby is not the tidal volume, it is the minute volume, and the minute volume is equal to the tidal volume multiplied by the respiratory rate. Sorry. So the baby is increasing his respiratory rate and become tachypneic because he wants his minute volume to be normal. So the solution here, supporting the baby more. Increase the tidal volume. After you increase the tidal volume, the baby will settle in the rate. So sometimes the baby is tachypneic, watching the CO2, so don't extubate the baby before checking the other parameter and see your baby and see the work of breathing and the trend and the measurement and the other curve to know how much MAP he is selecting and he was selecting, and that baby need more support by increasing the tidal volume to minimize his respiratory rate and his activity and become more synchronous with the ventilator. So look to the PCO2 and the pH of the baby, which are normal, and he suggests that baby is working hard, so increase the tidal volume. If the PCO2 is low enough, you can also sedate a baby little till you support the baby. If the tidal volume alarm sounds repeatedly, so the first response from some of us is that the tidal volume is not giving, so the baby need more PIP. So give more PIP to get the tidal volume. This is not the solution. The solution is to know why the tidal volume is lost. Is there any deterioration in the compliance? That the pressure is not enough to give this tidal volume? You have to know why. Is there any leak? Is this tidal volume measurement is correct or not? You have to know everything before just push the PIP and reach to higher tidal volume at one time, or you are not treating the baby on the pathophysiology and is a change which occur in the baby. So don't simply increase the pressure limit. Ask yourself about the tidal volume, it is accurate or not, and look to the cause, which may be pneumothorax, atelectasis, or pulmonary edema. And thank you, and the third part will come very soon, inshallah.